And we are recording, so go ahead.
Perfect. Welcome, everybody, to panel number 2 of the Esports Professionals Network. We're here with Jeremy, resident social media expert and founder of the Esports Professionals Network himself, Brandon Nolte. I am Tyler Schrodt from the Electronic Gaming Federation and EPN as well, coming live to you from my parents' house because startup life. So today we're going to be talking about 3 primary topics. The first is current trends in esports social media, which will be led by Jeremy and Brandon. And then we'll be talking about the new Facebook streaming platform, the new streaming deal between Blizzard and Facebook, how that'll affect kind of the general things going on in the world. And finally, we'll do a Q&A session on building your own personal brand across social media, best tips, tricks, things like that. And we'll have some open Q&A after that. So let's get right into it and start with Jeremy. Let's talk about, let's put on our Gary Vaynerchuk hats and talk about the current trends in social media, kind of at a broad sense and specifically to esports.
Well, I tracked on Twitter the teams that started back in 2009, Optic Gaming, Fnatic, SK Gaming. They all started around the same time, but Optic Gaming was the only one that reached the 1 million followers, and Fnatic's catching up, but they're still way behind. So what you do on social media matters even back then. And now it's not just Facebook and Twitter no more in esports. It used to be just everybody had a Twitter, everybody had a Facebook. That was their social media. They pretty much just let it ride. They would comment every so often. They wouldn't worry about engagements. They wouldn't try to do much with it. But now they're on Snapchat, they're on Instagram, they're trying to get the engagements, they're trying to reach out to their fans, they're trying to show value. And it's a big change, and it's awesome that teams are using geo-filters and teams are using periscopes. It's just so much more you get out of these teams, and fans want to see this stuff. And the intimate setting that esports has separates it from the traditional sports. We feel closer to the teams than traditional sports. We watch the players stream. We play in the same solo queue or dynamic queue. Well, we might, depending on if they come back or not. But, you know, we feel close. We feel like we're part of them. And teams are doing a lot to make it better. What do you have to add to this, Brandon?
No, I think you're exactly right. I think teams are actually taking an approach that, you know, social matters. There was always kind of a mindset of it always kind of came second to the team because, you know, for the most part, teams were run by the players and players focused on winning. And now, you know, we have the mindset that, you know, teams are businesses, which has completely disrupted the way that things are done. And that goes straight into the social side, which, you know, a lot of teams are taking the aspect that social is money. And, you know, when you look at how tight-knit, you know, revenue streams are in the industry from sponsorships to merchandise, you know, you have to start looking at how things are going to play out. And I was about a year and a half ago, right whenever I was starting Esports Entrepreneur, I said merchandise is going to be big in about 2 years. And, you know, you look at the different things going on now, and, you know, you have Jinx kind of doing merchandise licensing with Team Liquid, and, you know, everything else going on. You know, merchandise is going to be big stuff, and, you know, tying that into social media, it's just kind of where things have to be. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on the Gary Vaynerchuk hat.
Yeah, no, I agree definitely. And you know, while we were at the BZ Esports conference, one of the biggest things that the teams continuously talked about was how they're always looking for new ways to monetize different strategies and things, and turn what has long been, you know, really considered more of like a hobby industry into something that's actually serious, especially when we're dealing with contracts that are now, you know, upwards of million, like $3 or $4 million, I think is what the LCS spots were valued at recently. So I think when you get to that level, if you're not doing the social media correctly, then your brand is severely diminished, and then your ability to monetize and keep up with everybody else certainly suffers as a result. So definitely, to you guys' point, like the better integration of Instagram and Snapchat, Twitter, Twitch, like the entire thing is now kind of like the bare minimum that you can do, and it's required in order to kind of like break in and be a recognizable brand. So on that, from both of you, starting with Jeremy, if you were to rate, let's say, your top 3 teams in terms of their social media presence, what would those be? And for your top, why would you rate them the highest?
Well, I'll just start with Fnatic. Fnatic is, I feel, the top esport org on social. They really engagements. I tracked a bunch of different teams, and Fnatic like doubled or tripled some of these teams, and the other teams were big names. So I would definitely say Fnatic was my number one. Some other teams that do good, I like what some of the things Echo Fox is doing now. They got the 99-cent emojis. You can download it on your phone. I don't know much about it, but it seems really cool. And yeah, Brandon's on his mobile right now, so he might drop in and out. Esports life, you know. But yeah, I definitely would say Fnatic was number one, and they even do the merchandise really well. Like if you ask anybody, they'll say that Fnatic merchandise probably sells the most, and they're up there with any of the top brands. But like I said, Echo Fox is probably up there. They're on Snapchat. They're doing everything that they really jumped in. Like the past couple months, they've done a better job at it because they were a little slow to get started. And then other teams, CLG, C9. Fans love to engage with C9.
Yeah, absolutely. Brendan, are you back with us? Nope, I think he's still connecting. Well, I think that I would agree with your points, especially on the Fnatic side. I think as they've kind of been the trailblazers in the area of merchandising and kind of taking their first steps to following in more traditional sports media monetization stuff. I definitely think that they've kind of taken the biggest steps in that direction. Certainly, you find the brand equity from everybody else, like Cloud9 or whatever, and the way that they've kind of built up their fan base and started to transition into other things. I guess Brendan's having some issues with the mobile side of things, so I guess this is going to be a two-sided conversation between us. And in the event that he comes back, we'll certainly open more from him. So yeah, those are definitely the biggest things. Who do you think? I know you had alluded to it a little bit earlier in the like when we were opening. Do you know, or what, in your opinion, who do you think has taken the biggest leaps from, say, even like the beginning of 2015 or throughout that year to now, and what has been their biggest, asset in making that transition?
I would say like Team Secret. Like I know they're not a huge team, but in Dota, they're really good. And if you notice something about them, their Instagram followers almost match their Twitter followers. So that means that says a lot, because that says that if Twitter dies tomorrow, some of these teams are going to be in trouble because all their followers are on Twitter. But for Team Secret, they would still have followers on Instagram where they can convert those followers to whatever new platform pops up. Because social media platforms change all the time. A lot of people didn't think Twitter was going to get as huge as it did. People doubted Facebook when it first came out.
Yeah.
So you can't be so set up and closed-minded on the platform. That's why it's important to build your audience on multiple platforms. So if Twitter was to close tomorrow, you can convert your audience on whatever platform you still have them on to their new platform. Now, those MySpace followers aren't doing you no good right now, are they?
I believe I still have a MySpace, although I can't say that I've logged into it for the last 6 years probably. So, hey, Brandon, while we've got you back, why don't you give us your top 3 esports brands on Twitter, or just in general rather, and why you think your number one is number one?
Yeah, I think honestly my number one is Fnatic. They just haven't failed me yet for what they've been trying to do. Their Snapchat game, I'm pretty sure they have a Snapchat game. I haven't added them on my own as I've been trying to understand myself and try and build my following on that end. But I think Fnatic is number one. Number two would probably be a tie from the existing teams of probably TSM and Cloud9. But my number 3 spot, I guess I'm going into number 4 as well, but it definitely goes down to Echo Fox. I know Jeremy was kind of touching this a little bit earlier, but I don't want to underestimate the new dogs coming into the scene just because they don't have the largest following yet. But just because I feel like Echo Fox is just doing the right things over and over again. They haven't taken, hey, we're just going to be like, you should follow us because we're a team. They're giving reasons for people to follow them. If it's, having that access to Rick Fox, if it's, going behind the scenes into their different teams, and things like that. Overall, just Echo Fox is doing a really good job coming into the industry and just executing on things and making people want to follow them because there's value there. And it's not just, hey, we're a new team on the block.
It's been really good to see that. And I think one of the big things that I'll note about Echo Fox especially is that I think as we kind of march towards this mainstream, like larger acceptance sort of thing, the cross brands that have seen the integration of more traditional sports into esports, like Rick Fox or like any of the soccer clubs that have recently gotten into it, they're bringing along their audience. And I think that's adding a lot of value to the content they're bringing out, especially from an educational standpoint, just because we as an industry still have a crazy amount to go before we can, tell our grandmothers what esports are and have her understand them. But hopefully in this generation, as we see more of that come in, it'll be a real thing. So to take a quick break and answer a question from the Minimal Nerd, he asks, or she, sorry, do you guys currently think teams and other brands related to esports will start to see the true potential of being on Snapchat, like how other sports and brands have it in the past couple of years? So to paraphrase, Snapchat, yes or no? How do you feel about it?
I'm going to go ahead and go first on this one. Snapchat, yes. The thing with Snapchat is you're not going to see the conversions and the metrics that you would with general social media. If you have a Snapchat account and you're posting things on there, you're going to be seeing who viewed it, how many times it was viewed, and that's about it. If you're going to use the Snapchat filters, if you're looking to kind of give exposure for your brand, geo filters is kind of the way to go. But if you want the authenticity, Snapchat's going to be there. Snapchat brands, Snapchat brands. When it comes to esports really being in there, I think it's just kind of, the way that I look at it is that, you have Twitch, which it's great because, the players are interacting directly with, what they love doing, which is playing video games. But Snapchat offers that, hey, give a look into my real life. And I think with the way the industry is designed, or not designed, but already kind of has been built, it's all about, being able to live that dream. The sports industry does not offer that. It's very difficult to go into, hey, here's how I live my life type of stories, just because there's more regulations on the side of what players can actually have. I think esports needs to do more on Snapchat. There's always going to be something out there that they can do. Snapchat's still growing for brand kind of recognition. It's something that you have to have someone who really is willing to invest time into it. That's the big thing right now. Snapchat just takes a lot of freaking time. It's just not something you can put an hour into every day like Twitter or Facebook. You need to be thinking about what story you're telling.
Gotcha.
And then kind
what
of
about you,
going
Jeremy?
beyond it.
Yeah, Snapchat gives you the ability to tell your story. It's really authenticity. It gives the fans a closer look into your life, and there's just something about it that if somebody snaps me something personally, I paid so much more attention to that than somebody DMing me on Twitter or somebody, sending me a direct message on Instagram. It's just, and Snapchat has that. Snapchat has that attention. If somebody sees your story, they're watching it. They're seeing it. You got their attention when they're on Snapchat and they're watching your stuff. So that's where the value is. The value is, they absorb it. But you post something on Twitter, sure, you have your Twitter analytics. You can kind of see how many people might have saw it, but you don't actually know how many people saw it. But with Snapchat, they absorbed your content. They saw your content. So that's where Snapchat is above the rest. And it's a place to tell your story, and it just builds the brand. And I think fans love it. I think fans love teams on Snapchat. Will it get as big as other brands have used it and done well with it? It could, but it's going to need people to have esport orgs think out of the box and be creative and account swap, all this sort of stuff that you don't really see in esports. Like if CLG and C9 account swapped, like it would be strange at first, but what they're doing is they're broadening their audience, and that's what these other brands are doing. They're using creative ways to make.
Absolutely. Okay, so to paraphrase, Snapchat is really good because it's authentic. You get to see the behind the scenes thing and really understand what's going on. You have better attention, and you know that people are engaging on it, and it's another opportunity for you to connect. But on the negative side of the things, the analytics are not quite there, and the conversion rates are lower just because it's a different type of medium that hasn't necessarily matured to the same level that we would hope for from some of the other platforms. So I think that's excellent. Cake Man wants to know what you ate for dinner, Brandon.
I had Portillo's. So if you're a Chicago native,
sounds delicious. All right. So in the interest of time, let's move on to the next topic that has definitely been very hotly discussed since the initial announcement of it, the Blizzard Facebook partnership. And now in the last day and a half or so, specifically getting into now all of the matches are going to be now individuals, not just Blizzard titles, can be streamed across Facebook as either a parallel or alternative to Twitch or like Azubu or Hitbox. So I've read a bunch of articles on that today. There's a lot of really interesting thoughts and opinions, but let's start with Jeremy. What are your thoughts on before we get into that, just to answer Caitlin's thing, basically Blizzard is kind of like taking the initiative to be the first to use Facebook Live as a streaming platform. So some of their leagues and tournaments and things like that are going to be broadcast live on Facebook. Their hope is that it'll act more as a social tool and get more people that are actively engaged on Facebook to do more of that, and therefore add value to the brand and whatever. So the details of that deal I don't think have been released in terms of the specifics, but that is a big deal. And certainly if they're getting into the live streaming game specifically for gaming, that has some interesting implications when you compare it to like Twitch or whatever. So let's start thoughts-wise. Jeremy, what do you think about Facebook Live, and how do you think it's going to affect both esports and kind of the traditional gaming platforms or game streaming platforms like Azubu and Twitch?
Well, first off, I'll say I didn't read all these ton of articles. I do know a bit about it, and I have heard some streamers and different people have concerns about it, and they want to know, are they going to be able to monetize it? That's one of the big questions. Are they going to be able to use the same streaming platforms to, OBS? Are they going to be able to use that to stream? Is it going to be something different that Blizzard using? So there's just a lot of questions about it still. I mean, the streamers, if they're using Twitch and that's a win-win. That's good. For the businesses, that's a win-win. They're both getting publicity. Facebook's getting gamers. Facebook Live is kind of weird because you don't go to Facebook for live conversations. So now with these live videos, they're actually getting people to stay on their platform for longer periods of time. And I guess that's similar to what they want to do with the streams. So now they would have people on their platform for a longer period of time. And that's something that Facebook, I guess, wants. And that's all for Facebook, that the more ad dollars from that. And if they can prove that people are on their platform longer. So, I mean, I just think there's a lot of questions unanswered right now. It's new. It just came out. And that should be answered over time.
Absolutely. Brandon, what are your thoughts?
I think it has some great benefits. I think it has weaknesses that are just are kind of unclear yet. I think the Facebook Blizzard partnership, I think that's awesome. I've been kind of a big fan of whole licensing media type stuff. So it's just been I think that was a great position for Blizzard and Facebook alike. Whenever I first heard about Facebook actually wanting to do more individual live streaming, I thought about it to the Twitter, kind of put in a parallel of when Twitter was like, hey, we're going to extend our conversation, our kind of our tweeters to 10,000 characters. And there was this whole kind of thing about it and what it kind of meant. And at the end of the conversation, it was all about keeping users on their site and not allowing that off traffic. So Facebook, not only did they recognize that esports is huge, they saw that people were advertising on Facebook, hey, come watch my streams. So people were leaving Facebook and going to Twitch, right? So for me, I think that's great. If they're able to offer the money side of things that Twitch does, I think it's going to be there. Just because Facebook already has this ginormous advertising database. They already have those people on board that are wanting to put hundreds of thousands of dollars. I just accepted a job on Friday to be an associate ad manager for a very large digital marketing advertising firm. So what I do is analyze, where we can put hundreds of thousands of dollars and do Facebook advertising. So when you look at that stuff, I think it's a great opportunity for brands to kind of come in that are kind of non-endemic to the industry and put their money in there. There's a lot of questions that are unanswered, and I think it's very difficult to make hey, this is gonna be next best thing for Facebook. I doubt that's the case. I do think that it'll bring a certain amount of people to their site if they're able to do things. I know since Snoopy kind of said he's joining their team, they have very large ambitions, and just the fact that they're willing to invest money in this Snoopy to do kind of cool things and kind of be that moonshot guy. I really feel that Facebook's not just saying, hey, this is a side project. As I've said about Rick Fox, and I think I can say about Facebook, is that they're diving 100% in.
Right.
They're not going to be looking back and seeing, hey, we screwed up. So with that, I think it has a lot of potential. Whenever YouTube Gaming launched, I was very skeptical of it because I feel like most of YouTube's traffic comes from Facebook and the social media sites. Don't quote me on that because I don't know. I know they have a lot of organic traffic as well, just because of the size of it. But Facebook is kind of doing the same thing with what I mentioned with Twitter. Was that how do we keep more of our users on our site? And I think I have a lot to say about kind of what can be done with Facebook if it ends up working out the way that I like it to.
Yeah, and to definitely, as you're looking at the larger landscape, I mean, the biggest streaming people right now, obviously Twitch is dominantly in the lead. They own the lion's share of market. Close second after that, or not close second, I'm sorry. Second after that, I believe YouTube Gaming has overtaken Zubu at this point. And Hitbox is somewhere in there, and there's a couple other ones that are in their own rights in very specific niche opportunities doing okay. I think it was interesting that Facebook got into it. I imagine Blizzard was probably a big catalyst for that. So it's cool to see that. Some of the different points that I saw on it, going through the different articles that I read about it, and the very limited details that we have on the deal, there's a couple different perspectives you can take on it. So first, as a business, obviously, if your goal is to get viewers and native advertising and things like that, Facebook is the place to go because you have the largest organic audience just because of the vast size of Facebook. I mean, you're talking over 1 billion users, whereas Twitch is getting there, but still has, I think, probably half of that. So, I mean, you're looking at different types of things there. I think from the esports industry perspective, it's really cool that it's another touch point, again, working towards that mainstream acceptance, because the more exposure esports has to the larger space, the more interest that we'll see from the mainstream and hopefully a better sustaining of the industry itself. And so I'm all for anything that helps that come across. And I think, to Brandon's point, bringing on Snoop, some of the other people that had talked about doing things with Facebook, obviously collaboration with Blizzard. All of these are companies that the companies themselves are people that throw tons and tons of money at making something work. My biggest concern would be that they take a misstep and it ends up being like the equivalent of paper or something else that was supposed to be really big and then fell kind of short of expectations. And I mean, obviously, you never know what Twitch is going to do to respond to it, if they do something to respond to it. I think the question that Minimal Nerd asked about, do you think any exclusivity deals and or partnerships will come out of this? My opinion is the only way for these companies as they get into it to make their positions defensible is to start treating themselves like an ESPN, like a TBS, like one of those networks where they build in that exclusivity, because if you start losing your content people are going to stop going to your platform. And then you have something that look more like Google Plus than Twitch. So a lot of different areas to look at it. I'm certain that Blizzard's probably looking at that. I'm sure Facebook is looking at it for different ways to monetize. I'm kind of sad we lost our background soundtrack, but I'm sure Brandon will be back. And so I'm really excited to see what happens with it. I think kind of like the position I took on Wisa the last time we did one of these panels. I just want to see and wait. I mean, certainly as an organizer myself and someone that's, engaged in this from a business perspective, I'm excited about the opportunity. I mean, I already use Facebook advertising. I'm already pretty integrated into that. And I think similar to how Twitter started doing NFL or is starting to do NFL games, we'll see kind of how that turns out. So yeah, lots of cool stuff, right? Cool. So any closing thoughts on that before we move on to our last topic, which is more Q&A focused?
Yeah, I think keep an eye out on Facebook. Just, don't neglect it in the next 6 months. If you're thinking that Facebook's not gonna put $100 million into what the hell they're trying to do, you can probably say that you're going to be dead wrong and finish in last place if you're going to neglect it.
Yeah, I have a sneaking suspicion that Oculus may or may not be involved in this at some point as well. Especially there have been a lot of rumors about building VR support into League of Legends games and things like that. So if Blizzard is trying to beat them to the punch, a partnership with Facebook is definitely the way to go. So moving on to our third and final topic for the evening, we're going to spend anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes on this, depending on questions and just thoughts from us. During this, I want to go through personal branding on Twitter, and we'll kind of go through a case study and say, if you're either an individual or a team, I know they're different, but let's just assume that you're cross-platform, doing crazy stuff. Your life is really interesting on Snapchat, and you're trying to further your brand. What initial setup steps did you take? Where did you go first in terms of social media stuff? And what sort of generalized best practices do we want to look at? Let's start with Jeremy on this.
Well, since you mentioned what should we do first, I'll say this. Your brand is whatever is going to be your personal brand name or your company's name. Grab it on all the social media platforms. Even if you don't use it right away, just take it, stash it away, store it, get it in your control. You don't want to be fighting over that later. It's a lot harder to get later. Sometimes they hold hostage. Sometimes you have to buy it off people. It's just, there's a lot of hassle you can avoid. Believe it or not, some esport orgs didn't do this, and they now have control of it again. But you're the only one that knows your name, so you can make sure that you can get it on all the platforms. So
it's kind of like the new version of domain squatting. So, all right. So start off consistently across all all platforms, no matter what. Get all the names, even if you think you're never going to use it. I'm sure that's obviously step number one. Let's say if you're coming out as a brand, there's countless platforms that you can go to now. I mean, we're using Blab, which I had not heard about until we started doing these panels. So clearly there's a lot of opportunities. If you had to pick your top 3 platforms to start out with in terms of your brand, personal or team, where would you focus your most energy?
Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat, or Twitter, or Snapchat and Facebook, depending on what you're doing. I think Snapchat, it's hard to build your following from Snapchat, but as you're getting followers, and if they follow you over to Snapchat, it's a good way to convert them into advocates of you. So that's why I say that. Facebook is huge. That's why you want to be on Facebook, because there's just so many people on Facebook. Instagram it's good. It depends what you're trying to build though. So Twitter is still good. I think it's a fast moving platform. It's hard to get noticed sometimes. Things get buried, but I still think Twitter's a good platform to be on.
What about you, Brendan?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with what Jeremy had to say. Twitter, if you're not in Twitter in this industry, you're screwing up. The next one, I really don't think I can have a number two. I think it's kind of a tie between three different platforms, which is Snapchat, Instagram, and Facebook. If you're not on, I think teams need to have a Facebook channel. I think it's kind of one of those areas that people need to understand that if you're not on it, you're losing out on another kind of breakout point. Snapchat, I love Snapchat. I'd really like it to give it, on my top 3 list. But if I had to put it on a fourth area, I probably would. And I think this goes to what Jeremy says. You don't get organic followers on Snapchat. You have to have them come from your other channels. Snapchat is great if you have a following already existing. So, after your first 1,000, your first 10,000 people, if you went out and started a Snapchat and constantly pounded it, you can't. It is something that I have fault in myself is I'm not consistent enough with pounding people. Hey, follow me on Snapchat, or hey, go check this article out. Hey, go do this. You have the ability to do that on Twitter, and I think I think Snapchat would be number 4 for me. Until you have a following, then it'll probably go up to number 2.
All right, so I'm going to give you the organizational company esports standpoint on it, just from my personal foray into it as a business. I definitely agree that Twitter is number 1. It's the easiest touch point for your audience. Esports people in general, gaming, are always on Twitter or Twitch, and those are kind of like your main platforms that you're going to go after. From a company standpoint, I would also make sure you get a LinkedIn, a YouTube, and a Facebook. Snapchat, I think, depends to the minimum. Josh's point in chat. If you're using Snapchat as a company, trying to figure out what content you're going to be is hard. And the first thing they teach you when you're doing social media as a company that you shouldn't be trying to force yourself onto a platform that isn't relevant to you or that you're not able to put out consistent content for. So if you don't have like an interesting daily in the life of Gary Vaynerchuk style thing for your company, then Snapchat may not be the best platform for you. Periscope, Instagram, things that are very image based may not be the best. But anything where you're talking and engaging with your audience becomes really important. So I think to all of your guys' point, if you're a team, definitely Snapchat is super obvious, Twitter, LinkedIn for companies and things like that. All of them end up being important. It just kind of ends up, like Jeremy had alluded to, what's your purpose on social media? What type of company are you, or organization, or individual? And certainly what you have the most interest in getting into. To go back to the questions on it, Cakeman asked what the best social media area to go quickly on is, which I'm going to elaborate, I'm guessing, from that shorter question and say, what's the best social media channel to break into for the fastest growth following?
I would say Twitter. Just Twitter, if you know what you're doing. I think that's the answer to that. And I say this because if you don't know what you're doing, it's going to take one hell of a long time. And that's just what I've experienced with Esports Entrepreneur. The first 6 months, I think I gained like 180 people. And then 6 months later, I was at 2,000. So, and that's all because I completely changed my strategy. I started targeting, I literally went to the search bar and typed in esports management, esports marketing, esports legal, really found those keywords. And this is because, like, I was a brand that was not targeted as an organization. It's a little bit harder as an organization because, there's those keywords aren't there as much. But then I literally went and started favoriting and retweeting and following key individuals that were kind of focused around those terms. If I was an esports organization and I would say, hey, competing in this amateur league, I would literally search for that tournament and start liking or favoriting, everyone who's talking about it, get them to engage with my organization, and see if you can turn them into something. Even if they're rooting for another team, find a way to connect with them. Is it replying to kind of something they said, like, oh, hey, we think that was a great play too. They did really well. Or, so if they said GG to your team, be sure you reply to that. Be
Absolutely.
authentic.
All right. So Brendan's
It's,
answer
they
is Twitter, but do it in a way that is authentic and very hyper-focused. From the other side, you can always do paid advertising, which I will tell you from experience often brings in a lot of like bots and non-targeted people, even when you get pretty specific. So depending on your budget, it may be best to just focus on what Brandon said and like just go favorite the hell out of everything. Specifically focus to your area, or find some of the other interesting Twitter hacks that are available out on the line. So Jeremy, where would you break in, or what do you think the biggest growth area the fastest is?
I would say Twitter also. I know it's not very creative since Brandon already said it, but it's just for esports, especially esports related, everybody's on Twitter. That's where everybody's at. That's where the foundation is. And like Brandon was saying, esport orgs reaching out, just commenting on things. Lockhead's awesome about that. The number of times Lockhead just commented on things, and I've seen it, and they're just amazing about it. And like I'm not really a fan of any one team. I'm a fan of a lot of teams now. So Lockhead has to be in my top. I mean, they're awesome on Twitter. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just to the degree of Twitter being kind of like the number one choice across the board, because I would also agree with you. One of the things that I notice as an organization between Facebook and Twitter is Facebook will give you the most real accounts when you do things like paid advertising and content sharing, whatever. It's very heavily focused on video and resharing, and the way they treat your engagement varies pretty drastically. And it's also difficult to engage with your fans outside of if they like or comment on something that you post, where there isn't any way that you can like go and not be creepy when you like go seek out their stuff and like their statuses and whatever. So I think one of the biggest strong points for Twitter is the fact that as a brand, you can do what Brandon talked about and go out and you can favorite and you can talk as a brand, retweet, reply, whatever, and really show kind of like that genuine interest. And I know for me personally, like Rick Fox liked one of my tweets once, which, I mean, it takes no effort. It's just he maybe saw it in his feed and pushed a little heart. But that meant a lot to me because first it's Rick Fox, but also because on that platform, the engagement's just easier. So I think you guys are right on the head with that, and it's a huge opportunity. To transition slightly, Josh Kasurik, sorry if I butchered your name, asked, any love for Medium on sharing long-form content that shows expertise and insight? So from your guys' experience, if you're trying to put yourself out there either as a brand or an individual, how do you feel about using LinkedIn, Medium, some other blog to kind of show your expertise, or kind of do what we're doing in video format right now, even in kind of the thing that helps your brand strength?
I think I think Medium is awesome for that. Content marketing is huge. Let you answer this one. You're creating content about yourself, your brand, or content marketing. It's just it's huge. It's the way to go, and it's hard to get people to see it sometimes. Like Medium, what's great about Medium, you could be highlighted. If you're highlighted, so many people's going to see your stuff. You have to learn how to push that out, and if you don't have the following, you're going to have to use hashtags right. You're going to have to do a bunch of things right. You're going to have to find people that write about similar stuff that might have interest and tag them in it, and maybe they'll retweet it. There's a lot of groundwork, but writing the content, showing that you know what you're talking about, it goes a long way, and I'm all for Medium. LinkedIn is awesome. I definitely agree. I love Medium, though.
Absolutely. Brendan, you have any thoughts?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I want to share my thoughts as much as possible because, I use content to grow the esports entrepreneur brand. That is the only way I pretty much got people to come to my site. I don't think I've spent more than maybe $100 on paid advertising, and that's because I got like $100 free in ad word credits. So, all of the content that I made, I made the one impression that I was bringing value to somebody. When you guys write content, depending on what you're trying to write about, Jeremy writes about social media and the analytics behind it. Why these teams are successful. He's bringing value to people who want to know that information. So if you can find a niche that you know a lot about, and you're willing to put the time into it, and bring the value to people. If you're writing about esports management or even social media stuff, literally get on Twitter and at me, do at esports entree pray. I will retweet it. If it's content that I think my readers will find valuable, I would love to retweet that stuff. So what I'm saying with that is find the people who share this with the readers. Jeremy was saying, hey, get highlighted on Medium. I think that's great. But obviously Medium has an algorithm where, hey, we have to like your content first, and other people have to like your content.
Yep.
So make sure you're working with those influencers to get that content out. I've featured Jeremy's articles on both the Esports Entrepreneurs newsletter and also the Esports Professionals Network newsletter. And that's because I know his content is providing value. So with that in mind, anybody can write content, but if you're the one who's adding value, you're the one who's going to be successful. I think I wrote a piece of content on this a while back about cross-posting on Medium, LinkedIn, and also your own blog and wherever you can. I think it's great if you can do it correctly. When you're cross-posting, don't post the same content at the same time. It's kind of redundant. But if you post something on LinkedIn and you see the analytics, people are no longer reading it, post it up on Medium, more people are going to find it. There's a limitations with that. However, it's a good way to start getting your name out there. Utilize when you're looking at content, you're looking at personal branding. You also have to be considering how you're distributing that content, which Jeremy kind of mentioned with the hashtags. If you're doing kind of LinkedIn posts or even Medium posts, LinkedIn has like 10 or 15 different esports groups. Just go and post them in there. You might only get 30 or 40 people to come look at your stuff out of 1,000 people are that in the group. But it's 30 or 40 people who might share your post. And I think that's kind of what's the important value of sharing the content.
This is true.
If you don't share it,
all right. So we're about done here. So if there's any last minute questions or anything like that, throw them up in the chat. Otherwise, I'm going to do my last input on that and bring up something that we forgot to and keep it pretty short. So to wrap up what you guys just said is basically use it if you have some expertise. I think it's super important that to look at things from a unique angle, add unique value to it, because unless you are like Rick Fox, if you're talking about a topic that's been done over and over and over again and people are sick about reading to it, someone that doesn't have that type of following isn't going to add a lot of value for most people unless you're bringing some unique analysis or something that's truly an individual differentiated value add for it. So certainly a cool opportunity. Cross-post it, do everything that you can to be consistent, stagger things so you get maximum content out of it, and always remember to self-reference. So if you're posting on Medium, also make sure that you put like your Twitter and your Facebook links and stuff like that so people can find you easily. And then the last thing before we wrap up forever, for tonight is the Reddit question. And I know we could spend an entire panel on this, so I want to keep things pretty tight on it. But one of the big things that I found is Reddit, especially in esports, tends to be one of the biggest communication channels because in the subreddits that have crazy followings for a specific game, like CSGO or whatever, when news breaks about a team or a brand or whatever, that's usually where people go and either talk shit or actually have like legitimate debates about things. So make sure that you show up there. Or R-Esports, excuse me, and always make sure that you obey the golden rule of like 8-to-1 posting or something like that, where you can only self-promote for every 8 tweets, interactions you have on Twitter. So the last question we have is, again, from the Middle Nerd. When it comes to social media, do you think the younger demographics prefer shorter content, such as tweets, Snapchat, etc., or do you think that they prefer longer form content like Medium, YouTube, LinkedIn, etc.? And that'll be the question that we end on tonight.
Yeah, I think it depends. I think realistically, I think he's kind of right where the younger demographic that's kind of like not in college really do enjoy tweeting, Snapchatting. When you look at the demographics of who's on what sites, Snapchat is kind of the proof of that. They like that short content. They want to kind of get in, get out. Facebook. I think it just depends. Realistically, I think the esports industry is kind of half and half on it.
Yeah.
We have a lot of young people, but we also got, the old balls. And I think, realistically, I think we have, for me, I feel like we have more older people now than we did maybe 3 or 4 years ago, just because whenever esports was really big, you had those 18, 19-year-olds who are now 23 or 21, 24. You still have that growing kind of underage. Which are the 13 and 17-year-olds, and you see them a lot on Twitter. That's where you see them at. So I think yeah, I think the younger demographic does. I don't think that should be a deciding factor for your social media strategy, because obviously you need to kind of go towards all demographics in some capacity. You gotta look at your analytics.
I think good content is good content. A younger audience is gonna like visual. They're gonna be more visual instead of, maybe just something. If you do a medium, make sure there's images, make sure there's little clips in there, something to catch their attention. But good content is just good content. The younger demographic is really big into this Musical.ly app. Like, I think if Darshan or somebody in esports was really on Musical.ly, like, they could really nail that demographic. Also, the demographics of esports, I just tracked LCS this past weekend. The baby boomers was equal to Generation Z. So they were pretty much equal, and that would kind of seem kind of weird. But there's actually a lot of, it's not a huge percentage. Like, the biggest percentage is the millennials, of course. But there is a broad range of people in fall.
Awesome. So to summarize the answers from you guys, it kind of depends on the message that you're trying to put across, what sort of interaction you're trying to get, and what sort of value you're trying to add for that specific audience. So definitely following the general trends where younger prefer, shorter content, be able to hit those touch points, have a message that's clear and concise, but also be able to create that long form content for people that are going to have that preference. And like Jeremy said, good content is good content. So you shouldn't be one of those superficial brands, and certainly demonstrate knowledge wherever you can. So with that, I'd like to thank both Jeremy and Brandon and myself for spending some time with everybody this evening. It's a pleasure as always. I hope everybody got some stuff out of it. Be sure, if you're new to the group and the experience, to check out the esportsprofessionals.net. Join up and hang out with us on a day-to-day basis and do some awesome stuff for your community. If you have any thoughts on upcoming panels, topics that you'd like to see discussed, or if you'd like to be on a panel yourself, make sure to get in touch with Brandon, and we'll see you guys next time. Thank you again.
Yeah. It was a pleasure, guys.